My sister smirked, "Give me the key, I need to show my boyfriend around," after announcing she'd be moving into my apartment soon. So I said, "Do it, and the police will show you around a prison cell." I've been living in my current apartment for 3 years. It's a beautiful one-bedroom in a safe, walkable neighborhood with great restaurants, a park nearby, and only a 15-minute commute to my job. I worked hard to afford this place. It's about 30% of my income, but I budget carefully and it's worth it to me. My younger sister, Sarah, 20F, just finished her sophomore year of college and decided she wants to move off campus. She's been looking at apartments, but everything in her price range is either too far from school or in neighborhoods she considers sketchy. Last week, she came to visit my apartment for the first time in months, and I could see the wheels turning in her head as she looked around. 2 days later, my mother, Linda, 52F, called me with what she presented as a brilliant solution. She thinks I should swap apartments with Sarah. Her logic: young women need to live in safe, nice neighborhoods while grown men can live anywhere and protect themselves. She actually said those words. I was stunned. When I pointed out that I'd worked hard for this apartment and that it's close to my job, she brushed it off. "You're a strong young man, you can handle a longer commute. Your sister is vulnerable. Do you want something to happen to her because she had to live in a dangerous area?" The manipulation is incredible. First of all, the apartments Sarah is looking at aren't in dangerous areas. They're just not in trendy neighborhoods. Second, why is my comfort and safety less important because I'm male? I pointed out that crime can happen to anyone regardless of gender. And she accused me of being selfish and not understanding what women go through. What really gets me is the double standard. When I was Sarah's age, I lived in a cramped studio with 3 roommates in a building with broken locks and sketchy neighbors. Nobody offered to swap apartments with me. I was told it would build character and that I needed to learn to take care of myself. But apparently, Sarah needs to be sheltered from any minor inconvenience. My mother has been relentless. She calls daily to guilt trip me, saying things like, "I thought I raised you to protect your sister, and real men make sacrifices for family." She's even gotten my aunt involved, who texted me yesterday saying I should step up as a big brother. The thing is, I love my sister, but she's not some helpless damsel. She's smart, capable, and honestly a bit spoiled. She works part-time at a boutique for spending money, but our parents still pay most of her bills. Meanwhile, I've been financially independent since I graduated. I don't think giving up my apartment would help her. It would just reinforce that she can get whatever she wants by playing the vulnerable young woman card. I feel like I'm being gaslit. Am I really being selfish for not wanting to uproot my life? Is it wrong that I'm frustrated by these sexist assumptions about what men versus women need in terms of housing? I've always supported gender equality, but apparently that goes out the window when it's convenient for my family. Update 1. 2 weeks later, sister has started bringing dates to her future apartment. I can't believe I'm back here already, but the situation has escalated to levels of absurdity I didn't think possible. After my last post, I thought standing firm would eventually make my family back off. I was wrong. Last Tuesday, I came home from work to find Sarah in my apartment. She still has the spare key from when she houses for me last year. She was with someone I didn't recognize, a guy about her age who she introduced as Tyler. She acted completely normal, giving him a tour like she owned the place. "This is the kitchen. I'm thinking of replacing these curtains with something more modern," she said. I pulled her aside and asked what she was doing. She smiled sweetly and said she was just showing Tyler where she'll be living soon because he wanted to know if it was safe for her to live alone. The audacity left me speechless. Tyler seemed uncomfortable when he realized I actually lived there, but Sarah smoothly explained that I was temporarily staying there. After they left, I immediately changed my locks and texted Sarah that she was no longer welcome without an invitation. This triggered World War II in my family group chat. My mother called me petty and controlling. She said Sarah was just excited about her future home and I was crushing her dreams. My father, who had been neutral until now, chimed in that I was creating unnecessary drama and should just work something out with my sister. But it gets worse. Sarah has apparently been telling people at her college that she's moving to my neighborhood. She's been posting Instagram stories from the local coffee shops and restaurants, tagging the location with captions like, "Checking out my new spots and can't wait to be a regular here." My cousin sent me screenshots asking when I was moving. Yesterday was the breaking point. I came home to find not just Sarah, but Sarah and 3 of her friends having a wine night in my apartment. They'd moved my furniture around to create better flow and were discussing paint colors. When I walked in, Sarah actually had the nerve to say, "Oh, James, we're just having a little housewarming planning session." I told them all to leave immediately. Sarah tried to argue that I was embarrassing her in front of her friends, but I stood firm. One of her friends whispered, "I thought you said he was cool with it," which tells me Sarah has been straight up lying about our arrangement. After they left, I got a barrage of texts from my mother. Apparently, Sarah called her crying, saying I had humiliated her and ruined her reputation. My mother demanded I apologize and stop being territorial about an apartment I'm going to give up anyway. I responded with a firm message to the family group chat. I am not now, nor will I ever give Sarah my apartment. This is not up for discussion. Sarah entering my home without permission is trespassing, and if it happens again, I will treat it as such. The silence after that message was deafening. Then my mother privately messaged me saying I was breaking her heart and that she never thought her son would threaten his own sister. The emotional manipulation is off the charts. What kills me is how Sarah is portraying herself as this innocent victim who just wants a safe place to live, while simultaneously showing she's savvy enough to manipulate social situations, lie to her friends, and strategically guilt-trip family members. She's not some naive little girl who needs protection. She's a calculating adult who knows exactly what she's doing. Several of you warned me in the comments of my last post that this would escalate, and you were right. I've started documenting everything. The unauthorized entries, the lies she's spreading, the harassment from family members. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. Update 2. 1 month later, the family dinner ambush. I knew something was up when my mother invited me to Sunday dinner and insisted it was just going to be the immediate family. She seemed too calm, too pleasant on the phone. After weeks of cold shoulders and passive-aggressive texts, her sudden warmth should have been a red flag. I arrived at my parents' house to find not just my immediate family, but my Aunt Margaret, Uncle Paul, and my grandfather. It was an intervention. They'd actually staged an intervention about my apartment. My mother had prepared a PowerPoint presentation. I wish I was joking. She had crime statistics for different neighborhoods, articles about violence against women, and even a slide titled, "Why Good Brothers Protect Their Sisters." The most infuriating slide was a comparison of our salaries. How she got my financial information, I don't know. Showing that as a percentage, Sarah would pay more of her income for a safe apartment than I currently do. You see, my mother explained to the room James can afford to live somewhere less expensive. He's being selfish by hoarding resources his sister needs. My grandfather, who I'd always thought was reasonable, nodded along. In my day, men took care of the women in their family. We didn't need to be asked twice. Sarah sat there looking perfectly innocent, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She dressed specifically for this no-makeup hair in a simple ponytail, wearing a cardigan that made her look younger. It was calculated to make her appear vulnerable. When it was apparently my turn to respond to this ambush, I stood up and addressed the room. I explained that I'd worked 2 jobs through college to afford my own place, that I'd lived in subpar housing for years while saving up, and that I'd earned my apartment through sacrifice and hard work. I pointed out that Sarah had the same opportunities but chose to focus on her social life, which is fine, but choices have consequences. So you're saying Sarah deserves to be unsafe because she had a social life? My aunt interjected. That's victim blaming. I nearly laughed. What victim? Sarah isn't a victim of anything except her own poor planning and budgeting. That's when Sarah broke down in tears, loud, dramatic sobs. I just want to feel safe, she wailed. Why doesn't my own brother care about my safety? My Uncle Paul then made the mistake of trying to use logic. Look, James, let's be practical. You're a 6'1" man who works out. Sarah is a petite young woman. Who's more at risk here? I responded by pulling up crime statistics on my phone for the neighborhood where I live versus where Sarah is looking. The difference was negligible. When I showed this to the room, my mother dismissed it. Statistics don't tell the whole story. Women face harassment that doesn't get reported. Then maybe I suggested Sarah should consider getting roommates like I did at her age. There's safety in numbers, and it would help with rent. The room erupted. Apparently suggesting Sarah live with roommates was tantamount to throwing her to the wolves. She needs her privacy. My mother insisted, young women shouldn't have to compromise their living situations because of their gender. The irony of that statement, while trying to make me compromise my living situation because of my gender, was completely lost on them. The intervention continued for another hour. They tried every angle, guilt, manipulation, appeals to tradition, even offering to help me with moving costs. My grandfather offered to pay my security deposit on a new place if I'd just be reasonable. Finally, I'd had enough. I stood up and announced I was leaving. My mother tried to physically block the door, telling me we weren't done discussing this. I looked her straight in the eye and said, yes, we are. And if any of you bring this up again, I'll be taking a long break from family gatherings. As I was walking to my car, Sarah ran after me. For a moment, I thought she might apologize for this circus. Instead, she said, "I don't understand why you hate me so much." "I don't hate you, Sarah," I told her. "I just refuse to enable you." There's a difference. She then dropped the innocent act entirely. "You know I'm going to get that apartment eventually. Right? Mom and Dad always make sure I get what I need. Good luck with that," I said, and drove away. Since then, I've been getting messages from various family members about how I ruined Sunday dinner and made Sarah cry. The narrative has completely shifted from me being asked to do a favor to me being a villain who actively wants his sister to be in danger. I've started looking into legal options to ensure my apartment remains mine. I have a feeling this isn't over. Update 3. 2 months later, the dating app profile and the conspiracy. I thought my family had finally accepted defeat. After the dinner ambush, things went quiet. Too quiet. As it turns out, Sarah blocked me on social media. My mother limited our conversations to basic pleasantries, and I actually started to relax. I should have known better. Last week, my coworker Brian pulled me aside during lunch. "Hey man, this is awkward, but I saw your dating profile on Bumble. Just wanted to give you a heads up, you might want to update it. It says some pretty weird stuff. I don't have a Bumble profile. I haven't been on dating apps in over a year." Brian showed me the profile and my blood ran cold. It was definitely my photos ones from my social media that family had access to. But the bio was disturbing. It talked about how I was looking to relocate soon and excited to downsize and simplify life. It mentioned being ready to settle down with someone who appreciates a provider mentality and believing in traditional gender roles where men sacrifice for their families. Whoever made this profile, and I had a pretty good idea who had been matching with women and having conversations. The messages were all about how I was planning to move to a more modest apartment to help family and asking if they'd be comfortable dating someone who lives in a rougher neighborhood. I immediately reported the profile and started damage control. That's when I discovered the full extent of the scheme. There were profiles on 3 different dating apps, all with variations of the same theme. On Hinge, I had answered prompts about putting family first, even if it means personal sacrifice, and real men don't need luxury apartments. But the worst part, the profiles had matched with several women I actually knew, acquaintances from college, a friend's sister, even a woman from my gym. These connections had led to real conversations where I had explained that I was moving because my sister needs my apartment more than I do, and that I was proud to be the kind of man who protects the women in his family. I spent hours screenshotting everything and filing reports. Then I confronted the obvious suspect via text. Sarah denied it at first, but when I mentioned I was considering filing a police report for identity theft, she admitted to just trying to help. Her logic was breathtaking. She thought if I started dating someone while living in a lesser apartment, I'd realize it was hurting my dating life and agreed to swap. She actually said I was trying to show you that girls won't want to date a guy who doesn't have a nice place. I pointed out the irony. She was literally catfishing women to prove that women are shallow about apartments while simultaneously demanding my apartment because she thinks she deserves better. Her response, "It's different for guys." When I told her I was done with her games and would be pursuing legal action, she panicked and called our mother. Within an hour, I was getting calls from family members I hadn't heard from in years. Apparently, Sarah had spun a story about how she was just trying to help her brother's love life, and I was overreacting to a harmless prank. My mother's take was even more twisted. She said Sarah's actions showed how desperate she was for a safe place to live, and that I should be moved by her creativity rather than angry. She actually tried to frame identity theft as a sign of how much Sarah needed my help. I consulted a lawyer friend who confirmed this definitely qualified as identity theft and harassment. I sent a formal cease and desist letter to Sarah and made it clear that any further attempts to interfere with my life would result in legal action. The family explosion was immediate. I was called everything from litigious to vindictive to mentally unstable. My own mother suggested I needed therapy for my inability to share and my toxic masculinity that prevents me from protecting women. But here's where it gets really interesting. My cousin Emma, who's always been the family gossip, reached out privately. She told me that my mother and Sarah had been planning this for months. There were text messages in the family group chat that I'm not part of discussing Operation Apartment Swap, like it was some kind of military campaign. Emma sent me screenshots. They discussed everything from the dating profiles to hiring someone to accidentally damage my apartment to make me want to move. My mother had even researched whether she could use the fact that she co-signed my lease 3 years ago to force some kind of transfer. The messages revealed something else interesting. This wasn't really about safety at all. Sarah had apparently been bragging to her friends about moving to my neighborhood, and when I refused, she felt humiliated. My mother saw it as me publicly embarrassing the family by not supporting Sarah's lies. It was all about saving face and maintaining Sarah's image. Armed with this information, I sent one final message to the family chat, the one I am in. I have evidence of a coordinated campaign to harass me, steal my identity, and force me from my home. This stops now, or I pursue every legal option available to me. I will not be discussing this further. The silence was deafening. Then one by one family members started messaging me privately. Some were apologetic, saying they didn't realize how far things had gone. Others were still Team Sarah, but at least acknowledged the dating profile scheme was too much. Final update. 3 months later, the lease papers and the resolution. I thought the threat of legal action had ended things. Sarah had grudgingly found an apartment with roommates. My mother had stopped mentioning the situation, and family dinners had resumed with a careful avoidance of any housing-related topics. I should have known the silence was just the calm before the storm. Last Thursday, my mother invited me for coffee. She said she wanted to clear the air and move forward as a family. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She suggested we meet at a cafe near my office, which should have been my first clue. She never comes to my part of town. I arrived to find her already there with a manila folder on the table. She was dressed like she was going to a business meeting, and her whole demeanor was different. Less emotional manipulation, more corporate negotiation. "James," she began. "I've been thinking about our situation, and I believe I found a solution that works for everyone." She slid the folder across to me. Inside were lease transfer documents already partially filled out, along with a rental application for a comparable apartment in a different neighborhood. She'd done her homework. The new place was exactly 30% of my income, just like my current apartment. It was the same square footage, had similar amenities, and was even on a comparable floor. "You see," she explained with a satisfied smile, "I found you an equivalent apartment. Same price, same size, same amenities, so now you have no logical reason to refuse the swap." I looked at the address. The equivalent apartment was in an industrial area 45 minutes from my job with no public transit access. The similar amenities included a gym in the basement of an old building and a park nearby, a patch of grass next to a highway overpass. The neighborhood wasn't dangerous, but it was isolated, inconvenient, and frankly depressing. "You've been saying this is about the principal," she continued. "Well, I'm removing all your practical objections. This proves it was never about the apartment itself, but about your refusal to protect your sister." She then launched into a prepared speech about how protective older brothers ensure their sisters have appropriate housing, and how this was a test of my character. She actually used the phrase, "Real men make sacrifices invisible to the world, but known to God." I let her finish, then calmly asked, "Did Sarah help you pick this apartment?" "Of course not," she said, offended. "This is between you and me, a mother advocating for her daughter." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot Emma had sent me that morning. A text from Sarah to the family group chat. "Mom's meeting with James today about the papers." Crossed fingers? Fingers crossed. He finally stops being selfish. My mother's composure cracked slightly. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter," I interrupted. "What matters is that you're still trying to manipulate me into giving up my home. You've just gotten more sophisticated about it." She tried to recover. "This isn't manipulation. I found you an equal trade. If you refuse this, it proves you care more about status than family." "No," I said firmly. "It proves I won't be bullied into rearranging my life because you and Sarah think men should automatically sacrifice for women. It proves I won't reward Sarah's lies, harassment, and literal identity theft with the apartment she wants." Then I pulled out my own folder. Inside were copies of every harassing message, screenshots of the dating profiles, documentation of Sarah's unauthorized entries to my apartment, and a letter from my lawyer outlining potential charges for harassment, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. This is what protecting family has gotten me. I said months of harassment, manipulation, and crimes. Actual crimes, Mom. She went pale. "You wouldn't actually sue your sister." "I won't if this stops now completely. No more mentions of apartment swaps. No more guilt trips, no more family interventions. Sarah tells anyone who asks that she was mistaken about moving to my neighborhood. And you both apologize, genuinely. Apologize for putting me through this." Or, she asked, though she seemed to already know. "Or I pursue every legal remedy available to me, and I make it public. Every dating app profile, every family group chat, screenshot, every attempted manipulation. I wonder what Sarah's boutique job would think about their employee committing identity theft." I wonder what your church friends would think about you orchestrating harassment campaigns against your son. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, she gathered up her lease transfer papers with shaking hands. I was just trying to help your sister. No, I corrected. You were trying to control me using sexist assumptions about what men owe women. Sarah is an adult. If she wants a nice apartment, she can work for it like I did. That's actual equality. 2 days later, I received a text from Sarah. It was short. I'm sorry for the dating profiles and entering your apartment. I'll tell people I found a place I like better. My mother's apology came later via email. It was longer, more defensive, but included the key phrase, I apologize for trying to pressure you into giving up your home. The family dynamics remained strained, but improving. Sarah found a 2-bedroom with a roommate in a perfectly safe neighborhood that she can actually afford. She's apparently told people she decided she wanted the authentic roommate experience rather than living alone. Last week, my grandfather called me. Your mother told me what really happened. He said I owe you an apology too. I got caught up in old-fashioned thinking about protecting the women folk. But what they did to you wasn't protection, it was manipulation. It's been 3 months since this all started, and I'm still in my apartment. My locks remain changed, and I've installed a security camera. Sarah and I are cordial, but not close. I don't think I'll ever fully trust her again. My relationship with my mother is improving slowly, though I maintain firm boundaries. The whole experience taught me something important. Standing up to family manipulation isn't selfish, even when they wrap it in language about protection and sacrifice. Real protection would have been teaching Sarah to be independent and responsible, not enabling her entitlement. Real sacrifice is mutual and voluntary, not coerced through guilt and harassment. My apartment is still my apartment, and it's going to stay that way. Reflection. Looking back on these 3 months, I'm struck by how quickly a reasonable boundary, I won't give up my home, was transformed into a family crisis. The sexist assumptions underlying the whole conflict were never really addressed, just papered over when their tactics failed. What bothers me most is realizing how many people genuinely believed that as a man, my comfort and safety were inherently less important than my sister's. The idea that men can live anywhere, while women need protection through better housing, isn't just insulting to men, it's infantilizing to women. Sarah is perfectly capable of taking care of herself. She just didn't want to make the same sacrifices I did. I've had several people, mainly older relatives, tell me I'll regret not stepping up for my sister. But I did step up. I stepped up for my own rights and refused to be manipulated. That's not toxic masculinity. That's healthy boundaries. To anyone facing similar pressure, document everything. Stand your ground. And don't let family use gender stereotypes to manipulate you. Whether you're a man being told to sacrifice because you're strong enough to handle it, or a woman being told you need special protection, these attitudes harm everyone. My apartment has become more than just a place to live. It's a symbol of my autonomy and my refusal to be controlled by outdated gender expectations. And every morning when I make coffee in my kitchen, look out at my tree-lined street, and enjoy the home I worked hard to afford, I'm reminded that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. The family peace we have now might be fragile, built on the threat of legal consequences rather than genuine understanding. But it's better than being bulldozed by manipulation disguised as love. Sometimes protecting yourself means letting family be disappointed in you. And that's okay.